Hey guys, Harry here from the Art Gear Guide. Thank you so much for joining me today. Obviously, yesterday, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II died, and I just thought that I know it's not art related or anything like that, but it is kind of like part of the story as to how I became involved in art, and it's the royal family and the military and stuff like that is very much part of my backstory, and so I felt like as a way of remembering her, I just wanted to make this video for you guys, because you know all my army mates and all the rest of it, they don't need to hear this. They know all this because they were there, but I'm sure a lot of you guys well, I hope that you would like to hear some of these little things. But these are just memories that I have of Her Majesty and other members of the family as well. And so I'll just get right into it. But before I get into sharing my memories with you, I understand that there are people who disagree with the whole thing about the royal family, and that's absolutely fine. You know, we live in a democracy. We live in a place where everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and everybody's opinion should be heard, in my opinion. And I can understand a lot of the different points as to the reasons why people think that the royal family shouldn't be around. Now, as an Irishman, as a Northern Irishman, the people in Northern Ireland are fiercely loyal to the crown, fiercely loyal, and that stems back a long time, but I'm not going to get into that. So I don't mean to offend anybody who might be watching this video and who may disagree with the royal family, who may wanted the royal family abolished and things like that. I don't mean to offend you guys. You may not want to watch this video because, like I say, or like the title says, these are my memories, personal memories of Her Majesty, the Queen Mother, other members of the family that I personally shared, and with Nelson Mandela as well. And so I'll get into all of that in a second. So, but I just wanted to clear that because I am aware that there are people who don't think the royal family should be about. And maybe some of the things that I'm going to share with you might not sway your opinion, but it might just, you know, you might see it from a different side. So one of the things that we got to remember about the royal family is during the Second World War, when London was being blitzed, the Queen Mother was the Queen Mother and the King were told to like they were supposed to go into hiding. And that meant leaving central London and going somewhere else. But the Queen Mother refused to do that. And after the Blitz had happened, the Queen Mother was out on the streets with the people who were obviously left with the devastation of the Blitz. But when the Queen Mother and the King were walking around London, it did boost morale, as many other different things during those terrible times did. It brought unity for all the people in the United Kingdom and America and all the other different countries that were fighting against Nazism. So, but that was just one instance, and I think that for me is quite an important thing that rests in my mind, because a lot of people think that the royal family are this entitled group and they just get given money for doing nothing and all the rest of it. When Her Majesty died at the age of 96, she had not really stopped working. She was still doing, you know, up until very recently, up until she was able to, still doing her visits and what have you, and still doing her correspondence and all these other things. And there's not too many people, I know there are people, but there's not too many people who work until they're 96. And I know she's got an easy life in terms of she's got a lot of people working for her and helping her out and all the rest of it. But she could have just sat on her ass doing nothing, but she chose not to. Same with the Queen Mother during the Blitz. And so those types of things, when I was at school as a kid growing up, they kind of warmed me towards the royal family, which wasn't really a difficult thing to do as a child growing up in Northern Ireland in any case. So I had always wanted to be a soldier from being a little boy. I had Action Man when I was a kid, and my dad was a soldier. All of his brothers were in the army as well. They were in different regiments. My dad was in the 5th Enniskillen Dragoon Guards. He was a tank in a tank regiment. His older brother, George, my Uncle George, he was in the Royal Irish Rifles, which then became the Royal Irish Rangers. Then and then somewhere along the line it amalgamated into, or it split into the UDR, which was the Ulster Defence Regiment. And then my Uncle Frank, who's another brother of my dad, he was in the Irish Guards. And when I was going to join the army, my dad had wanted me to go into a tank regiment. Not necessarily the 5th Enniskillen Dragoon Guards, but he wanted me to go into a tank regiment. And when I went to recruiting, I got swayed into joining an infantry regiment because I didn't want to be. My headspace was, if you go into the army, you go into the army to fight. You don't go into the army to drive lorries or do all the rest of it. And it was a naive young thought to have, because all of those other parts of the military, without them, the fighting forces at the front can't function. And I know that now, but at the time, I just thought, as a young boy, aged 14, which is when I went, and I originally, got my mum and dad to sign my paperwork, so that when I left school, aged 16, I was out of school in the June, end of June, beginning of July, or beginning of June. I can't remember what it was, but when I left school then, it was only a couple of months in the October was when I went in as a boy soldier for a full year training. And I went into the Irish Guards. I chose the Irish Guards. Now, I didn't really know much about the Irish Guards or the Guards in general. Here in the United Kingdom, and I know a lot of people who visit the royal family and Buckingham Palace and all the rest of it, they see the soldiers stood outside Buckingham Palace and they think that's all they do. They don't realise that they are a group of an elite fighting unit who are frontline soldiers whenever they're not in their ceremonial duty. And here in the United Kingdom, we have obviously the SAS, which is America's version of Delta Force. And we also have the SBS, which is our version of the Navy SEALs. And then we have the Royal Marines and the Parachute Regiment. A lot of the lads in the Parachute Regiment tend to go into the SAS. And a lot of the lads who are in the Royal Marines tend to go into the SBS. Not always, but that's kind of like the pathway that goes in. And a lot of people here in the United Kingdom think that the Paras and the Marines are the elite regiments. But that's not true. And I know I'm talking from a very, very biased, very, very pride-driven place. But the 5 regiments of Foot Guards, which is the Scots Guards, the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards, the Irish Guards, and the Welsh Guards. And then we have the 2 mechanised units which make up the household part of the household division, which is the Blues and Royals and the Life Guards. They're the guys that are on the horses, but when they're not in ceremonial duty, their duty is tanks. And so when I joined the Guards, I done my training, and my first station was Chelsea Barracks. And so that meant then I was straight into ceremonial duties. And I can remember to this day my first Queen's Guard duty. Now, when you go on to Queen's Guards as a soldier, in the I can't remember which way round it is, but in the summer you either do 24 hours on at the palaces and then you're off, and then another unit comes in, or it's 48 hours. But it changes in the winter time, and I think maybe in the winter it's the 48 hours barrack guard that you do. I can't remember exactly what it was now. But when you went on a Queen's Guard, you would do the ceremonial part that all the people stand and watch, which is walking from Wellington Barracks over to Buckingham Palace. And then what happens from there is you do your changing of the guard, and then the unit that is there, that's about a group will go into goes into Buckingham Palace. Another group branches off and walks down the mall into Jimmy's, which is St James's Palace. And then another group, they march back over to Wellington Barracks, get on a bus, and they go to the Tower of London. And so that's where the three groups go to, and that's your 24-hour or 48-hour stint. Now, I've obviously done all of those, Buckingham Palace, Jimmy's, and the Tower, and I love doing the Tower because at the Tower, when you go to the Tower, on a night time, you always do the shutting of the gates, the ceremony of the keys, which is, if you ever get a chance, I don't think you ever will, because I know that the waiting list to stand and watch ceremony of the keys is like 3 or 4 years. But if you ever get a chance to see that ceremony, it is just exquisite, and it's never ever 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 stopped, except for one time, and I think it was during the Blitz. Just one night when the keys did not get changed over. But the other stint that we do is Windsor Castle, and for Windsor Castle we just get a bus. When we were in Chelsea, we would get a bus to Windsor. We would go to Windsor Barracks, get changed, and march from Windsor Barracks to Windsor Castle, and then we would do our dismount. We change over from the people that were there and go off. Now, my first Queen's Guard, I was at Buckingham Palace, and so when you do your change and you go into the guard room, which is right at the side of the palace, you're part of the palace. You're just like in a room that's part of the palace. There's access to the palace from that room, but that's where we stay. And I can remember being marched out to my sentry box and standing there. You're there for 2 hours, standing there, and I can remember when I came in, my shoulders and my chest was in so much pain because I was stood with so much pride for standing outside Buckingham Palace. And it just so happened as well that the day I done my Queen's Guard, the Queen was in residence as well. And for me, it was just that first occasion was amazing. Now, I've also been very, very lucky to be escort. I've done a couple of trooping of the colours, but I've been escort to the colour. In other words, every time the trooping of the colour happens, that's what it is. It's like the trooping of the colours, and it changes year by year. So like the Irish Guards will do it, then the Scots Guards, Grenadier Guards, that type of thing. And but not everybody is escort to the colour. That's like the company that will walk behind the colours, which is your regimental colours, and walk in front of the Queen. All the other guys that are on there, whether they're doing street lining or whether they're doing the actual procession, they're not part of the actual escort to the colour. And I done escort to the colour one year, and my mum and dad were in, because we were doing escort to the colour, our families were allowed to come. Vicky and I were married, and my mum and dad came, and my mum is a huge royalist, and so she just, for her, it was just like the best thing in the world. And for them to both be sat in Horse Guards Parade, which is where the Queen and all that sits, for them to be sat there watching their son, and I'll let you into a little secret, okay? I know this is going to sound strange and creepy, but I'll let you into a little secret that not very many people know until now. Not long before I did Trooping of the Colour, my grandfather died, and my Uncle Richard died not long after him. And my Uncle Richard was my mum's eldest brother. And the night before we did Trooping of the Colour, I had a dream. And on the dream, I was marching down the mall with my regiment. And in the crowd, I could see, they stood out from everybody else. I could see my grandfather and my uncle. And they were wearing what looked like tuxedos. Like, you know, the dicky bow and stuff like that. They were really, really dressed up. My granda was stood there with pride watching me. And so was my Uncle Richard. And that dream sticks in my mind. And the day of the trooping of the colour, I just kept remembering that dream, thinking, I wonder if they are watching. I wonder if my granda is proud of me, if he is proud that I've done this and this is where I've got to. So that's another memory. But then the real personal memory of meeting the Queen was when we do our guard duties at Buckingham Palace, or like the Tower of London and Jimmy's. You are in ceremonial duties. Again, I can't remember what the times are, but in the summer, I think it's till 8 o'clock at night, or it might be 10 o'clock at night. And then what happens is, you change from your tunic and your bearskin and all that, and you go and you get into your combats, and somebody will patrol the front of the palace where the public get to see the guards during the day. But at night time, you go round the back of the palace where they have the palace gardens. Now, you're only supposed to walk on a certain area because it's all censored out there, and, you know, there's certain areas that you can't walk on. So we go out as a pair, and we walk along, or sometimes individually. It just depends what guard you're on. And you go out, and all you do is you just walk up and down with your combats, your rifle, because people have tried to get into the palace lots of times. People have paraglided in, people have done base jumping off buildings and tried to parachute in. People have tried to drive through the gates, the main gates of the palace, by driving down the mall and straight into the gates. Other people have tried to climb over and stuff like that, and it gets really dangerous. And that's why we're there all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what. The guards or somebody else. Sometimes it can be the Gurkhas and what have you. But this night, I was walking along the back, just patrolling, thinking, you know, if anything happens, I'm ready for it. And all of a sudden, I hear this barking, like loads of, and I see like just a mound of corgis come running around, kind of like where I was, not to me, but they were just running. I could see it down at the bottom, and all of a sudden, I seen the Queen. And she was just in her normal clothes and stuff like that. And I just thought to myself, my God, what am I supposed to do here? Because obviously I know how to salute the Queen, and I know if you've got your rifle and all the rest of it, you do present arms. But so I brought myself to attention, and I saluted her. And then she just started talking to me, just like I was some bloke on the street, and she was just some woman who I had met. She was asking me my name, where I come from, the reason why I joined the Guards over any other regiments and stuff like that. And she had asked, you know, where I'd served, and she was just talking away to me like I was just a normal person, and she was just a normal person as well, and she was so interested. Now, when I came away from that encounter, I thought I was like the most important person in the world. I felt like 1,000,000 feet tall. But apparently this is a regular thing, or this was a regular thing, where the Queen would come out with the dogs on an evening, if it was a nice evening, and she would just talk to people. Now, my friend, this is like months later, when a dignitary comes to the United Kingdom, we do like I forget what it's called now. I forget the name of it now. But anyway, we all line up, and there's like, we take it in turns, and the dignitary and the Queen, or Prince Charles, or whoever it is at the time, will march through the ranks just to inspect this, and then we go back to guard duties and all the rest of it, and that's it. And this particular time, it was Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela had, we had done our bit during the day, and then it was night time, and we were, guarding out the back of the palace. But I was inside, and my friend was outside. He was on the back post, and he'd come back in, and the same thing had happened to him, only it was the Queen and Nelson Mandela was talking to him. And again, just talking to him like he was just ordinary Joe Blogs, and they were just two ordinary people off the street, just chatting to, but it was all about, it's always all about us, asking us our names, where we come from, the reasons why we do what we do, and things like that. It's actually really quite humbling to when you think about it. Now, at Jimmy's, that's where the Queen Mother lived, but also as well as the Queen Mother, Princess Michael of Kent. I think that's what her title. Yeah, Princess Michael of Kent. She resided at Jimmy's as well. Now, I don't know whether she was permanently there or whether she just came and went. I can't remember. But any time we were on Jimmy's at the on the sentry box, which at St James's Palace on the sentry box, you're quite a distance away from the public as well. They can see you, but you're still quite a distance away. And I don't know how many times Princess Michael of Kent, she would always walk up to the guards on the sentry box and just stand there talking to you, asking who you are, where you come from, do you like the army, why did you join it, and stuff like that. She was the nicest woman you could ever meet. She was really genuinely interested in knowing who you were and why you wanted to join the army and all these other things. And like I say, she would do that multiple times. And it's actually quite frightening, because when you're stood on those sentry boxes, you're not supposed to move unless you're doing your patrol, which is like your 10 steps to the left or right, whichever box you're on, and then come back. Other than that, you stand still or change arms, whatever, but you stand still. You don't talk to anybody, and you don't move about or fidget or anything like that. But obviously when a royal comes up to you, it's a different kettle of fish. And some of the lads as well, when they were doing like Windsor Castle, which is another one I had an encounter with the Queen and Prince Philip. I'll tell you about that in a second. But other lads, when William and Harry were little boys, there was two of the lads had gone out and they were on sentry duty. And obviously when a member of the royal family comes, you've got to present arms. So when you stand with the SA-80, the SA-80 is kind of like in your arm here, and it's resting on your shoulder. And to present arms, you grab the rifle here, and then you bring it out in front of you. You bring your arm up like that, and you're presenting the weapon to the royal family. It's the only people that you present arms to. Anybody else that comes up to you other than the royal family, when you've got your weapon like this, like when you're in a drill environment, you just bring your arm across like that and slap the butt of the weapon, and that's how you salute. Prince Harry and William, when they were little boys, found it hilarious to be, this is at Windsor Castle, running in and out of this archway where there was the two sentry boxes were, and they had the two guards, two of my mates, presenting arms for goodness knows how long, until their nanny seen them and brought them in. But that was hilarious, that hearing about that when those two lads came back in. And the other time I had an encounter with the Queen and Prince Philip was when you're on those sentry boxes, sometimes the there's also police there as well, and sometimes they'll come across and say to you, they'll just whisper to you, right, Her Majesty will be coming in, or Prince Charles will be walking past in a minute, or something like that. Just giving you a heads up so that you know that you've got to, do a present arms to them. And so he had said to me, Prince Philip's going to be walking past in a second, and the way the boxes are in Windsor Castle for one of the posts, you're stood on your sentry box, and it's called the Long Drive, and it really is long, and it's just like this road. It looks like something out of, like you would see in Downton Abbey, this big long road with trees, and it used to be where the kings and queens of like the past would hunt. Used to be a land that was filled with deer and things like that, and that's where they would go out hunting. But obviously now it's not like that. And right down at the bottom, I'm no good with distances anymore. I can't remember how long. There was a big fence where the gate was, but then the road just continued on. And I can remember, and so where the box was, there was like trees and stuff like that all the way down this side. And he had said to me, Prince Philip would be coming past. And all of a sudden, this little man came walking out of the trees, and he had like his barber jacket and stuff like that on. He had his flat cap on, his boots on, because that's where the stables were, just over to the right. And he just came walking out with his hands in his pockets, just walking across. And it wasn't until the very, very last minute, and I nearly didn't even present arms to him, I realised that it was Prince Philip, because until that point, you could end up presenting arms to a stable hand or something like that, in which case you get into a lot of trouble. So I had to be very, very, very careful, but I got it just in time. And then on this, I can't remember whether it was the same day or another day, I was stood on the same sentry box, and the police officer came across to me and he says, right, Her Majesty will be coming in in about 5 or 10 minutes, so just to let you know. So I'm ready, and I'm not doing any change arms or anything like that. I'm stood waiting to present arms, and I see this car coming down the Long Drive, and it's flying. I mean, it's really, really busting down this road, and I'm thinking to myself, that can't be the Queen, because if her driver was driving like that with the Queen in it, there would have to be a reason, and the reason would be to get her out of a situation. And there was no situation, because we were in the grounds of Windsor, but the car comes flying down. The gates at the bottom, they're already open. The police had been down there, they had opened the gates, so there was no stopping at the gates and then coming on. So this was like real fast, and I'm thinking to myself, this can't be the Queen. This surely can't be the Queen. And then right at the very, very last minute again, I can see it's the Queen is driving this car, and she is like belting down this road. So I just got my present arms in just in time, because the Queen, when she would inspect you, I know a lot of the public think that when the Queen is inspecting the soldiers, or when she was inspecting the soldiers, that she's just kind of like looking and that's it. That's far from it. The Queen was very, very meticulous. If she's seen any of her guards in bad order or anything like that, or she was watching from a window or something like that in any of the palaces, and she's seen you mess up, she would ring down to her people, who would then ring to the guard room, let the guard sergeant know that whoever's on the post at that time had messed up or had done something wrong. The Queen expected excellence from her soldiers, and in all fairness, without sounding too biased, she got excellence. We were trained well to protect Her Majesty and her family, and a lot of it's just funny, because there's been times when I was off duty and I would go to, like, me and my mate would be going out to go and get drunk or something like that, and we'd walk past all the crowds at Buckingham Palace. Sometimes if we knew, if it would be our mates that were stood on the thing. So we would go over and we'd be giving them the fingers and stuff like that, trying to make them laugh, and like standing there like this here as if we're going out on, you know, on the lash and they can't, just to try and get them into trouble. But when you're stood there, you can hear the comments from a lot of the people in that area. And there was one time one of my mates got really angry. He heard an American guy turn around and say, I can't believe that these guys get paid just to stand there. And my mate got really upset about that, and I said, listen, they don't know any better. Why would they? They come here and this is what they see. They have got no idea what we do in the theatre of combat or anything like that, and the level of training that we've got to go through to get. And all you've got to do now is like Google the guards and see the level of training that we've got to go through to become guards. We are an elite regiment. We're not SAS elite, but we are categorized as elite soldiers because of the capabilities we have to be in ceremonial duty, and then within 48 hours we can be in a theatre of combat ready to go, and that's quite a thing. But I know this has been a long video, and I'm sorry about that, guys. I hope you have enjoyed listening to some of these little stories. Oh, and another thing as well, I almost forgot. So on St. Patrick's Day, the Queen Mother would come and present us with our shamrocks. Now, the Queen Mother was our regiment. We were her regiment. The Irish Guards were formed on the 1st of April, 1900. And I believe the Queen Mother was born in 1900. Something like that. But anyway, we were her regiment. We were actually formed on the 1st of April, April Fool's Day, 1900. The Irish Guards were formed. But so the Queen Mother would come and present us with our shamrocks, and on St. Patrick's Day we would have the day off. So we would do our parade, and then we would go into the mess, and that would be it. We would get really, really drunk, and occasionally the Queen Mother would come in, sit down, have a couple of drinks with us all. And the first time I was there, when the Queen Mother came in, and she was kind of like sat, she'd come in, and when she comes in, we all sit up and shout 3 cheers for Her Majesty, hip hip hooray, and all this here stuff. It's all, I know it sounds daft, but it's all tradition. But when you hear like a couple of hundred soldiers who are sat there with beer and stuff like that shouting hip hip hooray, it doesn't sound like, it sounds like a thunderous clap, because these men that are there are so loyal and fiercely proud to be part of the Guards and part of putting their lives on the line to protect this family. But anyway, she was kind of like right here to right of me, and I just thought to myself, oh my God, if my mother was here, she would be beside herself. And a couple of years later, my mum got the chance to come to Chelsea Barracks and watch one of our St. Patrick's Day parades. Now, obviously, I was on parade. I was being issued my shamrock, but the Queen Mother was kind of like out in front, and she was very, very close to the families, to where all the wives and kids and stuff like that were. And I found out from Vicky that later on, some of the lads had to hold her back, because my mum wanted to go and curtsy to the Queen Mother, just to tell her how much she loved her, and it was quite funny. And obviously, and the thing is, I heard somebody say this morning on the radio that when Her Majesty was in a barracks somewhere, she felt completely relaxed and at ease, and was able to talk to soldiers very openly, because she felt safe, and because she knew that anything she was going to say or anything that she was going to do wasn't going to be taken down and sent off to a paper, and some reporter was going to go and twist it. She knew that anything that she did with these soldiers, these men and women who were prepared to go and die for her, loved her and would protect her. at all costs. And so when she was in that environment, she completely opened up. Same with the Queen Mother. And I'm really fortunate, and I find it really fortunate to be able to say this, privileged, honoured, all the terminology that you can think of, that I served in a regiment that has all the battle honours that we have, but also as well that had a very, very closeness to the royal family. And there's not many people now are going to be able to say that they served under a queen. We're going to have a king now for a long time, and then after that we're going to have another king. It's going to be a long time before this. I'll be long gone before we ever have another queen, unless something terrible happens. But so there's a lot of things. I know for a lot of people the Queen dying doesn't mean anything, and that's absolutely fine. But for another group of people, the Queen passing is a personal thing for a lot of people. I have tremendous memories of the Queen Mother, Prince Harry, Prince William, Prince Charles, the Dutch Princess Margaret Kent, Princess Anne, another one. I have and the Duke as well. I've got real fond memories that I will carry to my grave. I found it really. I found it a huge honour to be part of that in some small way, but it's still part of it nonetheless. And one last thing before I go. I can't speak for every man and woman who serves in the British Army, but I can speak for nearly everybody that served with me in the Irish Guards, and that is that when we go to war and we're in the unfortunate situation of being on a battlefield, any of the men and women that you ask after they come away from that who you're dying for, they will tell you they are dying for the people of this country, and they are dying for Her Majesty the Queen. Never once did I ever hear anybody say that they're going to die for the Prime Minister or for any of the other layabout MPs that sit in Westminster destroying lives. Although the royal family have very little power in terms of what they can do and what they can't do on a political theatre, as far as the armed forces are concerned, as far as the Navy, the RAF and the Army, like I say, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that every man and woman who serves under those banners, they served for the Queen, not for any one of those MPs that are sat in Westminster. Not a single one of them would any soldier have gone and fought for, because not one of them in Westminster, not one of them gives two raps about the people of this country. And I know that's a bit of a rant, but it's just how I feel at the minute, the way things are, and I feel that for far too long in this country we've been told that only the really super intelligent people can run a country, only the Etonians can run this country. We need these brains and what have you. But when you look at the dross that has cast a shadow over Westminster for generations, all these people have come from Eton and all these other highbrow places of education, Oxford and Cambridge and stuff like places like that, and they have done nothing for this country other than destroy it and to make the working class and the middle class even more poor than what we've ever been. And it's about time that we lose this mentality. That I think that we should lose this mentality that only the really highly intelligent people can run this country. I really don't think that's the case. I think so long as you have an understanding of what the people of this country want, and people like Boris Johnson and all these others don't, because they've never lived in the situations that we've had to live in. I think there's plenty of other really good people that can run this country much, much better than the likes of Tony Blair and Boris Johnson and all the others that have gone before. But anyway, it's a sad day for people here in the United Kingdom and across the world as well, because I think it's fair to say that the Queen touched the hearts of many people. Even in America and Australia and Canada and all these other countries, I really do think that the Queen touched the heart of many people. Anyway, guys, I know this is a really super long video. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to share those memories with you, and I hope you enjoyed listening to them. Thanks, guys. Bye.